Picture the inside of a chimney, not the outside, not the neat brick stack you see on a rooftop postcard, not the aesthetic smoke curling from a Georgian townhouse on a greeting card. The inside. It's about 30 centimetres wide in the old ones, sometimes less. Just wide enough for a small body to wedge itself upward, pressing elbows against gritty brick, pressing knees, pressing bare feet, scraping upward through a darkness so complete it isn't darkness at all. It's absence. The absence of everything. It smells like the interior of a furnace that hasn't been cold in 40 years. Because it hasn't. Centuries of soot packed into the mortar, soot in your eyes, soot in your nose, soot down your throat with every breath. The brick scrapes your skin raw. You can feel it happening. The slow removal of skin from your elbows, from your knees. And you can't stop it. Because stopping means falling. You're 8 years old. You've been doing this since you were 6. Welcome to 1843. Now here's the thing I need you to understand before we go any further. When we talk about Victorian parenting, most people picture something specific. Stiff family portraits, children who are seen and not heard, spare the rod, spoil the child as a general philosophy, stern fathers, emotional distance, very little hugging. That's not nothing. But it's also not the real story. The real story is that most of what Victorian parents routinely did to their children, most of what was considered normal, accepted, even recommended by doctors and the government, would today get you arrested. Not just reported to social services, not just a conversation with a school counsellor, arrested. We're talking about child labour in conditions that permanently destroyed young bodies. We're talking about drugging infants with opium to stop them crying. We're talking about a legal system where a 10-year-old could stand trial in an adult criminal court. We're talking about a practice called baby farming, where you paid a woman to take your infant and everybody understood, including you, that the infant probably wasn't coming back. We're going into all of it tonight. I make these history stories for sleep, which means either you genuinely find 19th century child welfare abuses relaxing, or you're just the kind of person who lies awake wanting to feel bad about industrialization. Either way, no judgment. Get comfortable. Here we go. You're 8 years old, and you're not a child. Not in any sense we would recognise. Not in any legal sense, not in any social sense, not in any practical sense. In 1843, the concept of childhood as a protected stage of human development barely exists. Not for people like you. For the wealthy, there's something approaching it. Rich children have nurseries, they have nannies, they have picture books and wooden rocking horses, and the theoretical luxury of being kept away from adult life for a few years. Though even that comes with its own horrors, and we'll get to those. But for the majority, for the working poor of Victorian England, children are labour, small labour, useful precisely because of their size. Small hands can reach into machinery without stopping it. Small bodies can crawl through mine shafts where adults don't fit. Small legs can climb inside chimneys. The law is catching up. Slowly. Barely. The Mines Act of 1842, passed just the year before where we are right now, banned children under 10 from working underground. 10. Underground. The bar for outrage in 1843 is set very low. And even that act, even that small protection, isn't being enforced. Inspectors are few. Mines are dark. Small bodies are profitable. You're not a child. You're an investment. Your master paid £4 for you. Your eyes open. There is no gradual emergence from sleep. No slow drift toward consciousness. No half second of warm blankness before the day arrives. You're just awake. The cold takes care of that. Not the cold of a house with the fire not yet lit. The cold of a place that hasn't been warm since October, and it's January now, and the frost has been on the inside of the windows for 2 weeks. You're lying on a straw sack on the floor of a basement room in Holborn that smells like, well, you know what it smells like. Soot first. Always soot. That specific burnt mineral smell that gets into the fibres of everything, that gets into the skin of your hand so deep you can't scrub it out. Underneath that, damp stone. The particular cold wet smell of London Underground, of cellars and pavements, and things that never quite dry. And underneath that, 3 other boys. There's Thomas, who's 9 and has been here a year longer than you, and has already got the cough. The wet kind. You can hear it in the dark, that low, persistent rattling that means the soot has gotten into the lungs and taken up residence. Thomas doesn't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. There's Will, who's 6. He only arrived 3 weeks ago and he still cries at night. Quietly. He's learned to do it quietly. And there's a boy whose real name you've forgotten because everyone calls him Sparrow, because of how thin he is. And Sparrow is 11, and doesn't sleep because Sparrow is planning to run. Has been planning to run since before you arrived. And one of these days he actually will. You don't sleep either, not really. Nobody does, quite. Sleep is a thing that happens to you rather than something you do. A few hours of semi-consciousness between one cold morning and the next. The bell. Not a church bell from outside, not yet. Those are the ones you'll hear later, marking the hours of the city's day. This is the small brass bell that the master keeps by his bed upstairs. The bell that means get up. You get up. The floor is stone under your bare feet. The cold of it hits the soles and travels straight up through your legs and settles somewhere behind your teeth. You pull your shirt on. It's the same shirt you wear every day, the same one you work in, stiff with old soot and your own dried sweat. There are no clean clothes. There is no changing. This shirt you wear today is the shirt you've been wearing since the master bought it second-hand from a rag dealer off Drury Lane in October. And it is going to be the shirt you wear until it literally falls apart. Your breeches are the same. Your feet you wrap in strips of sacking, because shoes are for later. Shoes are for when you go out to work, when the master takes you to the houses. Indoors, your feet are bare on the cold stone. Thomas is coughing again. He gets up anyway. Everyone gets up. You don't ask if you're feeling well. You don't get to feel unwell. Unwell is not a category that applies to you. Breakfast is in the kitchen. And when I say kitchen, I need you to understand what that means in the Master Sweep's house in Holborn in January of 1843. It's a low room with a range that smokes badly when the wind comes from the east. The range is the only heat in the building, and it doesn't warm the room so much as warm a small radius around itself. Maybe 4 feet, maybe 6 feet on a good day. Beyond that radius the cold lives. There's a pot on the range. Stir about. Oatmeal cooked in water with no salt. Maybe a little bone broth if the master's wife was feeling generous the night before. You eat it standing, all 4 of you, from earthenware bowls that you hold close to your chest for the warmth as much as the food. The bowl is the warmest thing you'll hold until you're inside a house with a working fire, and that's still an hour away. It's not good. It doesn't matter whether it's good. It's hot, and it's something. And in about 2 hours you're going to need every calorie it contains. You eat without talking. the master comes in while you're eating. He's a solid, square-shouldered man named Joseph Murch, and he smells like coal and something sharper. Something you don't have a word for at 8 years old, but which is in fact gin. Not drunk, not at this hour, but layered into him the way the soot is layered into you. His hands are permanently black. His face has been weathered to the colour and texture of old leather, the skin so ingrained with decades of work that the crease lines are dark. He looks at the four of you the way he looks at his tools. Assessment, not affection. Belgravia, he says. He names a street, a number. Lady with 3 chimneys wants them done before the family comes down. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock in the morning. The family won't come down from their bedrooms until 8 or 9 at the earliest. The chimneys need to be clean and the hearth swept and the whole operation invisible, as if it happened by itself. That's your job, to be invisible. Sparrow, you take the drawing room. Boy, he means you. He almost never uses your name. You do the back parlour and the morning room. You nod. You know those rooms. You've learned to read a chimney by its smell, before you ever go up it. The morning room chimney in a house like that will be narrow, old construction, pre-Regency, probably full of a winter's accumulation of creosote in the lower flue. You'll have to go up and scrape it loose with the flat blade, then come back down before the soot falls on you. Thomas gets the kitchen range, the easiest job but the hottest. Thick coal soot, wide flue, but the range has been burning all night and the bricks will still be warm. Not hot, hopefully, but warm enough to feel through your palms and remind you where you are. Will gets to carry the brushes and bags. Will is always carrying things. 6 is too young, even by Murch's standards, to send up a chimney. In a year, maybe 18 months, when Will's grown a bit more but is still small enough to be useful, then he'll start climbing. You finish your stirabout. You put the bowl down. You pull your shoes on, rough leather, too big, stuffed with more sacking to keep your feet from sliding around inside. And you walk out into the dark. London in January at 5 in the morning is a different city to any other version of itself. It's not quiet. London is never quiet, not even at 5 in the morning in the dead of winter. But the sound is different, lower. The daytime city is a wall of noise that hits you constantly. Vendors, animals, wheels, voices, everything simultaneously. The pre-dawn city is a murmur, a suggestion of sound. You can hear individual things. The hooves of a horse somewhere, methodical on the cobbles, pulling a cart of something, milk maybe, or the night soil carts coming back from wherever they take it. The soft sound of water somewhere, a broken pipe dripping into the gutter, slowly building a little ice shelf on the stone. The other sweeps are already out. You can see them sometimes moving through the fog, those distinct dark figures with the long brush handles over their shoulders, the bags of soot in their hands. Nobody speaks to each other. Everyone has their route, their clients, their appointed time. The fog is thick. January fog in London in 1843 is not romantic. We've all seen the paintings, the moody atmospheric cityscapes, the soft golden halos around gas lamps. But the actual fog is a brown-yellow thing that tastes like coal and gets into your lungs and makes your eyes water. It's the product of a million fires burning soft coal, of a city that heats and powers itself on the most abundant, cheapest fuel available, which is also the dirtiest fuel available, which produces a type of smoke that catches the moisture of the Thames Valley and creates something that isn't quite fog and isn't quite smoke, but carries the worst qualities of both. They'll start calling it pea super later. For now it's just fog. You walk through it. Murch ahead of you, Sparrow beside you, Thomas and Will behind. A small dark procession moving through the brown morning dark. And here's where I need to stop and explain something because I think it matters. Nobody's watching, not in a malicious way, not through cruelty or lack of feeling. It's just that in 1843, in this street, in this fog, nobody is calculating the harm being done to 4 small boys who are on their way to clean chimneys in Belgravia before the respectable world wakes up. Nobody is thinking about what the soot does to developing lungs. Nobody is running the numbers on how many climbing boys reach the age of 30. Nobody is asking what it means for a child's development to spend the years between 6 and 12 in physical darkness, scraping their skin against brick, because nobody has those concepts yet, not in any widely shared actionable way. Children are workers. Working is what children do. The alternative, childhood as a protected state, education as a right, the idea that the years before adulthood belong to the child, and not to whoever finds them useful, that idea is barely beginning to form, and it's forming mostly in the minds of reformers who are still seen as eccentric. Charles Dickens published Oliver Twist 5 years ago. People read it and felt bad about the workhouse system. Then they went back to not thinking about it. Parliament passed the Factory Act 2 years ago, limiting children to 10 hours of work per day in textile mills. 10 hours per day for children. That was considered reform. You don't know any of this. You're 8 years old. You know the width of a flue by feel. You know that if you get stuck, you push harder with your knees and don't panic. You know that the soot tastes different depending on what kind of coal has been burned, and the coal in Belgravia burns cleaner than the coal in the docks. That is most of what you know. The house in Belgravia is everything your basement room is not. You've been inside enough of them to stop being surprised, but something still happens when Murch rings the tradesman's bell at the back, and the housemaid opens the door and the warmth comes out. Just the warmth. Like the house is breathing on you. A breath of air that smells of beeswax polish and wood ash, and something faintly floral. Nothing like anything in your world. Inside, the gas lamps are already lit. Brass fixtures, polished. The kitchen is a different order of magnitude from anything in Murch's house. A proper range, a scrubbed deal table, a row of copper pots on hooks, a housemaid already starting the morning's work, and a scullery maid who looks about 14 and won't meet anyone's eyes. You don't meet anyone's eyes either. That's a rule. A real one. Don't look at the family. Don't speak unless spoken to by the family. Don't touch anything that isn't a chimney or a fireplace. If you need to pass through a room where family members are present, press yourself against the wall and don't breathe. Murch said this on your first day and he's never had to say it since. You understand. You're part of the infrastructure of this house. You're as visible as the pipes in the walls, the back parlour first. The housemaid takes you up the back stairs, the servants' stairs, a narrow steep flight that exists parallel to the main staircase, but in a different world entirely, and through a door that opens into the parlour. You stop for a moment, just taking it in. It's the kind of room that rich people use for ordinary things. Sitting, reading, receiving lesser visitors. The fireplace is white marble. The wallpaper is deep green with a gold pattern. There are books on shelves with uniform spines, and a piano in the corner that has a piece of sheet music open on it, left there by whoever was playing last evening. The grate is piled with ash and cinder from last night's fire. The marble is dusted with a faint trace of soot that's drifted out through the damper. You get to work. And here's where this becomes physical, because I want you to feel this. You kneel on the hearthrug and start with the grate. Your hands go into the ash, cold by now, cold enough not to burn, but still warm enough to register when you're freezing. You feel the ash shift under your fingers, the weight of it, the dryness. Cinder has a specific texture, not quite like anything else, and you know from touch alone where the unburned pieces are and where the fine ash is, and you scoop it all into your bag without thinking about it. This is automatic. Your hands know what to do. Then you look up into the flue. Dark, obviously, but you can feel the draft, a slight pull of air against your face, cold air coming down from the chimney top far above. That's good. That means the flue is clear at the top. Whatever's accumulated is in the middle or the lower section. You take your flat scraper and your candles. You work by candle wedged into the mortar on the way up, and you go in. I want to be precise about this. The flue in a Belgravia townhouse built in the 1820s is approximately 14 inches wide at the base, narrowing to maybe 11 or 12 further up. You are 8 years old and small for your age. Murch chose you partly for that reason. The same way he chose Will and the others. You fit. You fit the way a human body should not be required to fit inside a brick chimney. You press your back against one side and your feet against the other, and you walk yourself up. Elbows out, knees bent, redistributing your weight between the friction of your back and the push of your legs. It's a skill. It takes months to learn, and it's never comfortable, and it never gets easier. Your body just learns to do it. The bricks scrape your elbows. You're wearing a shirt, but the elbows of the shirt have been scraped through and have been scraped through again, and the fabric there is a kind of hardened soot-soaked leather that provides marginal protection. Your knees are worse. Your knees are always worse. There's a particular line of raw skin just below the kneecap that never fully closes, that opens again every morning. You go up. The darkness is absolute after the first 2 feet. The candle below is a suggestion of light. No more. Above you, nothing. No light, no sound except your own breathing, which the chimney walls amplify strangely. Your breath comes back at you like someone else is breathing alongside you. The soot smell changes as you go up. Fresher, more acrid. This flue gets used most evenings in winter, and what you're finding above your head is the accumulation of maybe 4 months of burning. Creosote and soot and tar, baked onto the inner walls. You scrape. Your blade moves across the brick and the deposits come loose. Sheets of blackened material, crumbling and falling past you and down. Some of it hits your face. Some of it goes into your mouth when you breathe. You've learned to breathe through your nose. You've learned not to cough in the chimney because coughing loosens your grip, and loosening your grip is the beginning of a fall. 12 feet up. 15 feet. The flue narrows here slightly, and you adjust your position, working harder with your knees to maintain purchase on the smooth brick. 20 feet above the hearthrug in the back parlour of a Belgravia townhouse, alone in total darkness, 8 years old. This is not unusual. This is Tuesday. You come back down slowly, loosening your position carefully, feeling each foot placement before you commit your weight. The light from below grows. First, just a suggestion. Then the actual orange glow of your candle stub. Then the square of light that is the hearth opening. And you back out of it and sit on the hearthrug for a moment, blinking in the comparative brightness of the curtained parlour. Your elbows are bleeding. Not badly, just the thin seeping kind that's always happening, that you no longer register as injury. You wipe your hands on your breeches and look at the room, the sheet music on the piano. You can't read music, you can barely read words, but you can see that it's been left there by someone in the middle of something. Someone sat there yesterday evening and played and stopped and left it exactly as it was, expecting to come back to it. Someone lives here who plays piano in the evenings. Someone lives here who has evenings. You sweep the hearthrug and set the fire for relighting and move to the morning room. At 7:30, while you're working in the morning room, something happens. A door opens upstairs, footsteps on the main staircase. Not the servants' stairs, the real stairs. The sound of a person who doesn't have to move quietly in their own house. You freeze. The rule is, if family members are present, press against the wall. But you're in the middle of cleaning the morning room grate, which means you are directly in the sight line of anyone who walks through the door, and there isn't enough wall between you and the door to disappear against. So you do the next best thing. You become very small and very still. A woman, 30s maybe, in a wrapper and a cap, the kind of clothing that means she's come downstairs before she's properly dressed for the day. She doesn't see you immediately. She goes to the window and pulls back the curtain and looks out at the grey January morning and sighs, just slightly, the kind of sigh that isn't addressed to anyone. Then she turns and sees you. A long moment. She's holding something in her hand, a small glass bottle with a dark liquid in it. You'll think about that bottle for the rest of the morning. You already know the shape of those bottles because you've seen them in every kitchen you've ever worked in, every nursery, every servant's room, the dark brown glass, the cork stopper, the specific size. She doesn't scream. She doesn't call for someone. She just looks at you with an expression that's not unkind but is also not especially interested. "Almost finished?" she says. "Yes, Mum." She nods and leaves. That's it. You go back to the grate. But I want to stay on that bottle for a moment, because that's the other part of this story. The woman is on her way to the nursery. The nursery's upstairs. In the nursery there is an infant, probably a few months old, given the sounds you heard yesterday from the upper floor. And the bottle she's carrying contains tincture of opium. Laudanum. It might also be something called Godfrey's cordial, which is sweetened with treacle to taste better. But it's still opium dissolved in alcohol. This is what Victorian mothers gave their infants when they cried at night. Not all mothers, not all the time, but enough. Frequently enough that Godfrey's cordial was manufactured and sold by the barrel to chemists and street vendors and anyone who dealt with mothers of young children. Frequently enough that quieting a child was a recognized practice, and the substances used for it were legal, available, and recommended by some physicians. You give the baby laudanum so it stops crying. The baby sleeps. You sleep. Everyone sleeps. Except sometimes the baby doesn't wake up. I want you to hold that image. A mother in a wrapper in the grey morning light of January, on her way to the nursery with a small brown bottle, and there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with what she's doing in the eyes of 1843. It is simply how things are done. That's not cruelty. That's exhaustion and habit and a medical culture that doesn't yet understand what opiates do to infant nervous systems. But a child is being dosed with opium in the nursery upstairs, and one floor below that, working in silence in the morning room, another child is bleeding on his elbows on their hearthrug. Both of these things are happening in the same house. Both of them are normal. Somewhere in London this morning, a short cab ride away, a different world entirely, a physician named Dr. Graham is starting his rounds. Dr. Graham is a perfectly good doctor by the standards of 1843. He graduated from Edinburgh. He reads the journals. He keeps up with the latest developments. He is a conscientious man. Dr. Graham believes the following things. Children are resilient. They bounce back. The hardships of early working life build character and strengthen the constitution. Sentimentality about child suffering leads to softness, and softness does not build the British Empire. Crying babies should be quieted promptly before they exhaust themselves. Godfrey's cordial is perfectly safe in recommended doses. Soothing the infant nervous system with small quantity of opium is standard practice, and has been for generations. Children's bodies can be improved through proper correction, by which he means physical punishment. The cane, the strap, the birch rod, applied with appropriate firmness to appropriate parts of the anatomy, is a medical and moral necessity for proper child development. Dr. Graham is not a monster. That's the part that matters. He's a man of his time, operating within the epistemological limits of his era, doing what he genuinely believes is best for the patients in his care. He's not cruel by design. He simply lives in a world where the harm done to children is invisible, because children are not quite fully real in the way that adults are real. He does not have the concept of trauma. He does not have the concept of attachment theory. He does not have the concept of adverse childhood experiences. He does not have the concept of developmental harm. He has the concept of building character, and character in 1843 gets built through suffering. Now I want to take you somewhere else for a while, because child labour is only part of this story. Child labour is what happens to poor children. The things that happen to wealthy children are different, but not less interesting. There's a school about 40 miles northwest of London. A boarding school. You're not there. You're a chimney sweep's apprentice. Boarding schools are for a different category of human entirely. But I want to take you there anyway, because what happens at this school is also Victorian parenting. It's also what loving parents of means voluntarily do with their children. The boy's name is Edmund. Edmund is 7 years old and he arrived at this school 3 weeks ago, and he has not slept a full night since. Not because the dormitory is uncomfortable, though it is, cold and crowded and loud with the sounds of 20 other boys who are also not sleeping, but because of what happens in the afternoons. The afternoons are when Dr. Henning teaches Latin. Dr. Henning has a method. The method involves a long, thin cane with a slight flexibility in it, and the method is applied to the palm of the hand, the backs of the legs, or occasionally the back itself, depending on the nature of the error and the mood of Dr. Henning, who has been teaching Latin at this school for 23 years, and who has developed extremely precise ideas about how Latin should be learned and what happens when it isn't. Edmund doesn't know Latin. Edmund is 7. Dr. Henning knew this when he arrived. The headmaster knew this. Edmund's parents, loving parents, prosperous parents, parents who went to considerable expense to send their son to a school with a good reputation, knew this too. It doesn't matter. The methodology is the methodology. You learn Latin under the cane. If you learn slowly, you experience the cane more frequently. Eventually, most boys learn Latin. The connection between Latin knowledge and freedom from pain is considered a perfectly adequate pedagogical mechanism. Edmund is writing a letter home that he won't send until the holidays, and the holidays are 3 months away. Dear Mama, he writes in careful small letters. I am well. He is not well, but I am well is what you write. It's what you're expected to write. Letters home from school in the 19th century are a specific genre of fiction. The I am well letter, the food is good letter, the master's a kind letter. You write it because deviation from the form creates trouble when the masters read your correspondence, and the masters do read your correspondence. Edmund is 7, and has been away from his family for 3 weeks, and has been beaten 11 times and cried himself to sleep approximately 16 times, and he has 2 more years before he's old enough to be moved to the senior school, where the beatings are less frequent, but the social cruelties inflicted by older boys are worse. His parents love him. They absolutely love him. They believe they're giving him the best possible preparation for adult life. It builds character, his father said, shaking Edmund's hand on the day he was left at the school gate. Not a hug, a handshake. Boys who are going to be men don't get hugged when they're being left at school. Hugging would be the opposite of the point. I am well, Edmund writes, and seals the letter. You're back in Holborn by 11. Murch has 2 more jobs this afternoon. A chandler's off Fleet Street and a rooming house near Holborn Circus, whose landlord wants all 6 fireplaces done before the month's end. But for now, the morning is done and you have an hour. The hour is yours in the sense that Murch isn't actively using you. You can't go far. You can't go anywhere that costs money. But you can sit in the yard behind the house and do nothing, which is a remarkable luxury. You can watch what passes in the alley. You can eat the piece of bread and dripping that Mrs. Murch has left for you on the kitchen table. The bread is yesterday's, getting towards hard. The dripping is cold. White beef fat congealed in a bowl. You eat it quickly, standing at the kitchen table, the same way you eat everything. But it's food, and it's solid in your stomach, and for a few minutes after eating it you feel something approaching all right. Sparrow is in the yard. He's repairing a brush. The bristle heads wear out and need constant maintenance. Tying new bundled twigs with wire, his fingers quick and precise. His eyes are somewhere else entirely. You hear about the girl off in Dell Street, he says. You sit down on the step. What girl? Baby farmer's girl. He ties off the wire, tests the bristle head with his thumb. One of Mrs. Winter's. You know Mrs. Winter by reputation. Most sweeps boys in this part of Holborn know her by reputation, the same way they know which pub will serve them if they've got pennies, and which constable takes a percentage of the crossing sweeper's earnings. Mrs. Winter is what's called a baby farmer. And here I need to explain baby farming, because it's one of the most quietly horrifying practices of the Victorian era, and it doesn't get talked about enough. Here is the situation that creates baby farmers. A woman has a child. She is not married, or she is married but her husband has left. Or she is married but so desperately poor that one more child means everyone starves. The child is an impossibility, a liability. In 1843 there is no welfare system, no child benefit, no safety net of any kind. What she can do, what women have been doing in desperation for generations, is find someone to take the child. The baby farmer is that someone. You place an advertisement. You find them in certain papers. Respectable woman will care for infant, good home, love and attention guaranteed, lump sum or weekly terms. Or you find them through word of mouth, through the network of women who know these things that women know out of necessity. You pay a fee, or you make arrangements for weekly payments, and you give up your child now. What actually happens then depends entirely on the individual. Some baby farmers are genuine. Some women do take in children and care for them adequately. This happens. But the economic logic of baby farming is terrible. A lump sum payment, one payment at the beginning, means the farmer has an incentive for the arrangement to end quickly. A dead baby costs no more to bury than a living one costs to feed for another year. Overlying is the euphemism. The baby died in the night. These things happen with infants. Nobody investigates too closely. The farmer has the money. The mother doesn't ask questions because she can't afford the answers. Mrs. Winter of Endell Street has been taking babies for 15 years. What happened to the girl, you ask Sparrow? Wasn't a baby, was older, 3, maybe 4 years old. Mrs. Winter had her working. He ties another wire without looking up. Constable found her on the street begging. No shoes. Winter said she'd run off. Had she run off? Sparrow shrugs. Who knows? Either way, she's in the workhouse now. The workhouse, where children who have nowhere else to go end up. You sit with this for a moment. This girl, 3 or 4 years old, no shoes on a January morning, walking the streets of Holborn begging because Mrs. Winter found a use for her earlier than expected. 3 years old. If this strikes you as monstrous, and it should, here's the thing to sit with. It's not illegal. Not exactly. Not in any way that the law of 1843 readily addresses. The Infant Life Protection Act that will eventually make baby farming a prosecutable offence won't exist for another 30 years. The concept that children have legal rights independent of their parents or guardians, rights that the state must protect, is still an aspiration rather than a law. In 1843 you can do almost anything to a child and the law will not intervene, because the law regards children primarily as property, the property of their parents or their master or whoever holds the legal claim to them. You are, in some technical sense, Joseph Murch's property. He can beat you. He can work you to exhaustion. He can malnourish you. What he cannot do, what the law of 1842 now technically prohibits, is send you up a lit chimney. Technically. Progress. The Chandler's shop on Fleet Street is a different kind of chimney. Commercial buildings have wider flues usually. This one you can stand almost upright in for the first 10 feet, which is easier on your knees and elbows but harder in a different way, because a wide chimney doesn't let you brace yourself properly. When the soot falls, it falls in large quantities and lands on you. The chandler is a small, sharp-featured man who smells exactly like his shop. Tallow candles, rendered fat, that warm, slightly nauseating sweetness that gets into the back of your throat and stays there. He watches you work with the particular attention of a man calculating whether he's getting value for money. Make sure you get the flue above the damper, he says. That's where the blockage is. You don't need to be told. You can feel the blockage from below, the change in draft, the way the air movement stops about 12 feet up. You go up past it, scrape it loose, come back down ahead of the falling soot with your bag positioned to catch as much as possible. The chandler inspects your work, runs a finger inside the lower flue, examines the soot on his finger. Passable, he says. High praise. On your way out, you pass through the shop itself. The chandler's main room, with its rows of candles, its faint sweet smell, its window looking out onto Fleet Street. There's a boy in the corner, maybe 10 or 12. He's dipping candles, the old method, the one that takes hours, dipping wicks into the hot tallow again and again and again, building up the layers. His movements are automatic, mechanical, the absolute minimum motion to accomplish the task. His eyes are unfocused, not glazed with misery, just elsewhere, far away from his hands, which continue working whether he's paying attention to them or not. He's been doing this all morning. He'll be doing it all afternoon. When the shop closes, he'll do whatever else needs doing. He looks up when you pass. Same exchange as with the crossing sweeper this morning. That flicker of recognition. Then you're out the door and onto Fleet Street, and the cold air hits you and you breathe it in, soot and coal smoke and horse and city and everything. And it's cold and unpleasant, and also, just briefly, it's open. I want to stop here and tell you something that Murch hasn't told you, because Murch wouldn't. The cancer is called chimney sweep's cancer, scrotal cancer. It was described by a surgeon named Percival Pott in 1775. That's almost 70 years before where we are right now. And it was the first occupational cancer ever identified in medical literature. Soot is carcinogenic. Extended contact with soot, prolonged exposure to the chemicals in coal soot produces cancer. Pott documented this. The connection between chimney sweeping and cancer has been known for 70 years. It hasn't changed anything. The climbing boys of London still have significantly elevated rates of scrotal cancer. They also have elevated rates of lung disease, chronic bronchitis, what they'll later call industrial lung disease. Thomas's cough is the beginning of something that has a specific trajectory, and the trajectory doesn't end well. They have elevated rates of eye damage from soot particles. They have chronic joint damage from the positions required to climb, from the stress on still developing cartilage and bone. They have skin damage, immune suppression from chronic exposure, the specific bone deformities that come from childhood malnutrition combined with hard physical labour. The average working life of a climbing boy is perhaps 8 to 10 years, not because they retire, because their bodies give out. By 16, most are too big to fit in the flues. The ones who have a good master might be taken on as assistants, helping to manage the brushes and bags. The ones who don't have a good master are simply released, their apprenticeship expired, their usefulness ended, their bodies worn down and their lungs already compromised, into a city that has no further use for them. Some manage, some find other work, other trades, other lives. Some end up on the street, some end up in the workhouse. The cancer usually comes later, 30s, 40s. By then, you've almost forgotten where you came from. Murch knows all of this. He knows it the way people know things they can't afford to act on. He feeds you adequately. He doesn't beat you often. By the standards of 1843, he is not a bad master. He simply hasn't told you that the work you're doing is systematically destroying your body, because what would be the point? The rooming house near Holborn Circus is a different world again from Belgravia. Narrow, tall, the kind of building that's been subdivided and subdivided again as London's population grows, and the pressure for cheap rooms grows with it. 6 floors, 2 rooms per floor, maybe 3. A single privy in the yard shared by the entire building, and you can smell it from the alley. The landlord, Mr. Fitch, is a grey-faced man who smells like damp plaster, and who counts things compulsively. He's counting the soot bags as you bring them in, counting the number of times Murch consults his watch, counting something only he can see. "All 6, he says. "All 6, Murch says. "And you'll have them done by—" "End of the afternoon," Fitch nods. "Count something." "The rooms in this building are occupied. That's the difference from the Belgravia house, which was empty of family while you worked. Here, people are home. There are families in these rooms. You can hear them through the walls and floors as you work. A woman's voice somewhere above, a baby crying on the third floor, the particular sound of children playing in a space too small for them to properly move, that constrained indoor running and the thump of small feet on board floors. The third floor room. You set up in front of the fireplace, spread your canvas to catch the falling soot, and start to work. And then the door opens. A woman, late 20s, a baby on her hip, the crying one from the sounds earlier. 2 other children behind her, a girl maybe 5 and a boy maybe 3, who press themselves against the wall when they see you and stare. You know that look. The look of children who've learned the unexpected adults require caution. The woman looks at you, looks at Murch, looks back at you. "How long?" she asks Murch. 20 minutes. She shifts the baby to her other hip. The baby is still crying. Not the desperate cry of genuine distress, more the continuous low complaint of an infant who is tired and uncomfortable. It's wearing too many clothes for how warm the room is, and they're the wrong kind of clothes. Layers of a rough cloth that look like they've been improvised from adult garments cut down. The woman reaches into her apron pocket. Dark glass. The particular size of a Godfrey's cordial bottle. She measures a small amount. Carefully, she does this carefully, which is not nothing. Some mothers don't do this carefully. Onto a spoon. And she gives it to the infant. The crying stops, almost immediately. The specific and particular quieting that laudanum produces, that total relaxation of all tension, the body unclenching all at once. The baby's eyes go soft, peaceful. Every muscle in its small face releases. The woman puts it down on the bed and turns back to you. 20 minutes, she says. Yes, ma'am. You go up the chimney. Let's look at the numbers for a moment, because I think the numbers are clarifying. In 1843, approximately 80% of infants born in London to working-class families will not reach the age of 5. That's not primarily laudanum. That's disease. Cholera, typhoid, scarlet fever, measles, all of which hit children hardest, all of which thrived in the overcrowded, under-sanitized conditions of working-class London. That's malnutrition. That's accidents in unsafe housing. That's the foundling hospital system which takes in illegitimate infants, and in which, in some years, the mortality rate approaches 90%. But it's also, in some percentage, laudanum. Godfrey's cordial is sold in quantities that suggest it's a staple of infant care in working-class London. The British Medical Journal will eventually document cases of infants who are addicted, physically dependent on opiates before they can walk. Infants who cry not from hunger or cold, but from withdrawal, who are then given more Godfrey's cordial to quiet them, in a cycle that doesn't end well. The doctors know this is happening. The reformers write about it. There are articles in newspapers, and Godfrey's cordial keeps selling. Because the woman on the 3rd floor of the Holborn rooming house has 2 more children, a husband who works 10 hours a day at a rope walk in Bermondsey, a rent to pay, and an infant who will not stop crying. She is not medicating her child out of cruelty or negligence. She's medicating it because if she doesn't, nobody in the building sleeps. And if nobody sleeps, nobody functions. And if nobody functions, everything collapses. She's doing what she was told to do. What her mother was told to do. What the chemist on the corner sells the ingredients for without comment or restriction. Child protection legislation in Britain is 70 years away. It will come. But not today. The chimney on the 4th floor. You've been up 5 already today. Your body's tired in that specific deep way. Not the surface tiredness of a long walk, but the bone-level exhaustion of repeated physical effort in a confined space. Your elbows have stopped seeping and have dried into a crust that pulls when you bend your arms. Your knees ache with a particular grinding quality that you've learned to ignore, to file under the category of things that are always happening and cannot be helped. The 4th floor chimney is the one Fitch warned about. Hasn't been swept in 3 years, he said. Before my time. 3 years of accumulation in a working fireplace. You feel it immediately when you go in. The flue is narrow, narrower than any of the others in this building, probably an older section of the structure that predates the rest. And the creosote deposit is thick. Not just soot, but actual creosote, black and tarry and hard, built up into ridges and protrusions that narrow the already narrow flue further, each one pressing slightly against your shoulders as you go up. You're 11 feet up when it happens. Your right knee slips. Not a fall, not a sudden drop, a slip. Your knee loses its friction against the right-hand wall for just a moment, and your weight shifts, and suddenly you're not balanced between 4 points of contact, but between 3, and the 3 are wrong. You're pressing outward harder with your left elbow and left knee trying to compensate, and that works. It holds you, but now you're tilted and the soot is coming down. Your scraping loosened a large deposit above, and it's coming now, and it goes everywhere. It coats your face. It goes into your eyes. It goes into your mouth before you can close it. Don't panic. The rule. The absolute rule. Thomas told you this on your first week, and it's the most important thing anyone has ever told you. If you panic in a chimney, you die. Panic makes you lose your purchase. Lose your purchase and you fall. Fall in a flue and you don't fall clean. You fall in a tumble, catching limbs on projections, and the best case is you come out the bottom with broken bones, and the worst case is you don't come out at all. So you don't panic. You hold. You breathe through your nose, slow and deliberate. The soot is in your eyes, and you can't see. You couldn't see anything before. You navigate by feel anyway. Your eyes don't actually help you in here. You feel for the left-hand wall with your left knee, and you find it, and you recenter your weight, and you hold. 30 seconds, a minute. Your breath going in and out, measured, controlled. The soot slowly settling around you, fine particles floating down past your face in the dark. Then you move down, carefully, 1 foot at a time. When you back out onto the hearth, you look up, and Murch is there. He's been waiting. He looks at you, reads the situation, the soot on your face, the way you're holding your right arm slightly away from your side, the quality of your breathing. Narrow one, he says. Yes. Blocked? Mostly. Got most of it loose. He nods. He drops down and looks into the flue with his small mirror. They carry mirrors to inspect chimneys from below, and checks the state of the deposit. Good enough, he says. Come on. And that's it. That's the entirety of the response to the fact that you just hung in total darkness by your knees 11 feet above a hearthstone, with soot in your eyes, and your right knee about to give out. Good enough. Come on. You wipe your face on your sleeve. You follow him to the 5th floor. By 6 o'clock you're done with the rooming house, and Murch has one more job. A printer's off Shoe Lane whose chimney's been smoking badly, affecting the press. This one is quick. The chimney is wide, and the obstruction is a rook's nest halfway down the flue. You drag it out with the hook, check the lower section, reset the damper. The printer gives you a penny. Not to Murch, to you, directly, pressing it into your hand before Murch comes back through. Good work, boy. You close your fist around the penny and say nothing. You don't get to keep pennies. Strictly speaking, they belong to Murch. That's the rule. But you close your fist and keep it. And Murch is talking to the printer and not looking. And you put it in the place in your shoe where the sacking makes a small pocket. 1 penny. The first money you've had that's actually yours in months. You walk home behind Murch in the dark of the January evening, and you can feel the penny in your shoe with every step. A small weight, pressing up against the sole of your foot. Real. The city at dusk is doing what the city does at dusk, contracting slightly. The daytime workers heading home or to the pubs, the night workers emerging. The street lamps being lit one by the lamplighters with their long poles. The shop windows glowing warm. The smells changing as the cooking fires of 1,000 households begin. Cabbage, something roasted, coal smoke, the background smell of horse that never fully leaves. Somewhere on the street a woman is singing. Not performing, just singing as she works. Some ballad or hymn, something without clear words at this distance. Just a voice carrying through the cold air, steady and low and completely unconscious of itself. You don't know any songs. You've heard them, but you don't know the words to any of them. You've never had a reason to sing and nobody has ever sung to you. Not in any memory that you have access to. The voice fades as you turn a corner. The attic room, same as every night. Thomas is coughing. The wet, rattling cough. The one that goes on past the point where it can be ignored. He doesn't get up. He coughs lying down, his shoulders heaving, his face turned to the wall so as not to wake anyone. You can hear in the pauses between the coughing that he's trying to breathe quietly, that he's making an effort to take up as little of the shared air as possible. You lie on your back and look at the ceiling, which is invisible in the dark. You think about the boy with the candles in the chandler's shop, the crossing sweeper at the intersection, the girl from Endell Street who had no shoes. You think about the nursery in the Belgravia house, 1 floor above where you were working, with the painted wooden rocking horse you caught a glimpse of through a half-open door when the housemaid wasn't watching. The clean white walls, the faint smell of lavender and warm milk, the specific quality of calm and warmth that drifts from nurseries in good houses, from rooms designed for nothing except children and their comfort. 2 kinds of children in the same city. The ones in nurseries with rocking horses, the ones in chimneys. You don't have the language for the unfairness of this. You're 8 years old, and you don't have any framework for thinking about justice or rights or the systematic nature of the thing you're living inside. You just have the image, the rocking horse through the door, the cold floor in the morning under your bare feet, the penny in your shoe. You fall asleep with your fist curled around nothing. There's a place 2 streets away from Murch's house that you pass sometimes and never go near. Not by choice, just by the route, by the geography of your daily movements. St. Giles Workhouse. It's a long grey building with a high wall and a gate that's usually locked from the inside. You know what happens inside because everyone knows what happens inside. It's not a secret, it's practically the point of the thing. The workhouse is where you go when you have nothing. No money, no family, no trade, no options. You present yourself at the gate and they take you in, and in exchange for the food and the roof, you work. Everyone works. Children, old people, the sick, the able-bodied. Everyone does whatever the workhouse requires. For children, the workhouse is also a sorting mechanism. The workhouse children are assessed. The ones who seem trainable are apprenticed out. To farms, to manufacturers, to masters like Murch. That's probably where Will came from. He has the institutional blankness of a child who's been managed by an institution, who's learned not to want things or expect things or ask for things. He never asks questions. He just does what he's told with his eyes slightly forward and his mouth closed, and you've started to wonder whether that blankness is protection or damage or both. The ones who aren't apprenticed outstay. They work in the workhouse. Boys break stone or pick oakum, unravelling old rope into loose fibre hour after hour until your fingernails bleed. Girls clean and cook and mend. They're also educated, technically. There's a schoolroom in the workhouse where the children receive a few hours of instruction per week. The curriculum is narrow and practical. Enough reading to understand instructions, enough arithmetic to count. The Lord's Prayer, the basics of whatever trade the authorities think they'll be sent to. It is not, by any definition, an education. But Parliament is beginning to take interest in this. The question of what children in institutions should be taught is becoming a political question. The idea that even pauper children might benefit from something more than rote arithmetic and scriptural memorization. That idea is gaining ground, slowly, tentatively. Reform is always slow when it requires people to spend money on children who belong to nobody important. Far above your world, in the drawing rooms and committee meetings and houses of Parliament that are as removed from your basement room as the moon is, something is actually happening. Lord Ashley, who will later become the Earl of Shaftesbury, has been campaigning for child labour reform for years. He was the driving force behind the Mines Act of 1842 and the Factory Acts. He walks into the slums personally. He visits the climbing boys. He talks to them and records what they tell him. He has spoken in Parliament about what he saw in those conversations. He described boys of 5 and 6 being sent up chimneys. He described the practice of lighting a fire under a boy who was reluctant to climb. It was called encouraging him. He described the cancer, the lung disease, the mortality. Parliament listened. They passed the Act. The Act is not being enforced. This is the gap, always the gap, between what the law says and what actually happens to 8-year-old boys in Holborn at 5:30 in the morning in January. Ashley keeps pushing. He'll keep pushing for decades. He's one of those rare historical figures who sees a thing clearly and will not stop seeing it, who has enough social standing to make noise and who uses that standing relentlessly. In 20 years, things will be different. Not perfect. Not yet, but different. You don't know about Ashley. You've never heard his name. His speeches are in a world that doesn't intersect with your basement room in any tangible way. But he's there. He's working. That's worth knowing. Sundays are different. No work. The Lord's Day. Even Murch observes this. After a fashion, the brushes stay in the corner. The soot bags hang empty on their hooks. You're supposed to attend church. All apprentices are. The local church is St. Giles in the Fields, a 50-minute walk, and Murch herds you there himself on most Sundays, standing at the back while the 4 of you sit in the pew, and the Reverend Something speaks about whatever the Reverend Something speaks about, and you sit with your back straight and your hands in your lap and your eyes at a point slightly above the altar, and you think about whatever you think about, which on this particular Sunday is whether the crack in the ceiling plaster near the east window is getting larger and what would happen if it kept spreading. After church, the afternoon is yours, loosely, within the geography of the neighbourhood. Sparrow has a plan, as always. Today his plan is Covent Garden. Market's still running, he says. They won't notice us. Covent Garden Market on a Sunday afternoon is a completely different thing to the morning market. The formal trade has stopped, but the overflow continues. The cheapest sellers, the ones who can't afford a proper stall, the street vendors with their baskets and their patter. You walk 20 minutes through streets that are different on Sunday, quieter in one way, louder in another. The pubs are busy, the churches are emptying, people in their Sunday clothes moving with a specific Sunday gait that's half leisure and half obligation. Covent Garden is noise and warmth and colour after the grey of the week. Not the raw November cold of the work mornings, but actual sound and heat and movement. The throng of the market's edges, the people who've come to look as much as to buy, the street performers working the periphery, a man with a dancing bear, an actual bear, mangy and sad, performing a shuffling walk on a chain while the man played a small drum. The bear's eyes were flat and exhausted, and somewhere very far away, you and the bear have something in common. A woman selling hot potatoes from a brazier, the potato smell cutting through everything else, through the cabbage smell and the horse smell and the coal smell, a smell that was pure and warm and simple, and your stomach responds to it in a way that has nothing to do with thought. You have the penny. 1 penny, hidden in your shoe since the printer. Sparrow is looking at the woman with the potatoes. He's been living on stirabout and bread and dripping same as you, and the smell is doing the same thing to him that it's doing to you. If you've got anything, he says, not looking at you. You get the potato. 1 penny, 1 potato. The two of you standing on the edge of Covent Garden Market, eating it between you, passing it back and forth, the heat of it going into your cold fingers, the taste of it. Just potato, nothing on it, just the starch and the warmth. Better than almost anything. You don't talk, you eat. Thomas didn't come with you today. His cough was too bad. He stayed in the yard. You should have saved some for Thomas. The thought comes too late, the potato already gone. At roughly the same hour that you're standing at the edge of Covent Garden eating a potato, about a mile to the west, in a comfortable house in Fitzrovia, a woman named Mrs. Clara Hartley is interviewing wet nurses. A wet nurse is a woman employed to breastfeed a mother's infant. The practice is old, ancient in fact. But in Victorian England it has a particular character. Wealthy women do not breastfeed their own children. It is considered unsuitable. It is also considered damaging to a woman's figure and incompatible with the social demands of a wealthy household. The decision not to breastfeed is not unusual or contested. So you hire a wet nurse. A woman from the lower classes who has recently given birth and has milk. She feeds your child. She may live in your house, or the infant may be sent out to her house. The infant being sent out to the nurse's house is where this gets complicated. Mrs. Hartley is doing this correctly by the standards of her time. She is interviewing candidates. She's looking at the women's health, their teeth, their complexion, their general situation. She'll ask for references. She'll choose carefully. What she will not think too hard about is what happens to the wet nurse's own infant. The wet nurse's own child exists. Every wet nurse has recently given birth. That's the source of the milk. That child is still there somewhere. If the wet nurse comes to live in the Hartley house, the wet nurse's own child goes somewhere. A sister, a mother, a neighbour, a baby farmer. It goes somewhere, and what happens to it there is unknown, and is, in Mrs. Hartley's moral universe, not really her problem. The wet nurse's milk goes to Mrs. Hartley's infant. The wet nurse's own infant drinks whatever is available. Pap maybe, bread soaked in water, arrowroot, sugar water. Infant mortality among working-class infants in Victorian England is already appalling. Among the infants of wet nurses, infants whose mothers have been employed to feed someone else's child, it is worse. This is documented. It was documented at the time. Mrs. Hartley doesn't know this. Or if she knows it in some abstract sense, she doesn't hold it as something she is responsible for. The practice is normal. Her mother hired a wet nurse. Her grandmother hired a wet nurse. She hires a wet nurse. The wet nurse's infant is 6 weeks old. I want to take you somewhere else now. Somewhere that shows you the full shape of what a child is in 1843 under the law. The magistrate's court at Bow Street. A boy stands in the dock. He is 10 years old. His name is William or George. The records from magistrates' courts in this era don't always note the names of minor defendants with the care you'd hope for. He's been charged with theft. He stole a loaf of bread from a baker's window. The bread was worth 4p. He is 10 years old. In 1843, the age of criminal responsibility in England is 7. Below 7, a child cannot be charged with a crime. The law assumes they cannot understand what they're doing. Above 7, they can. At 10, William or George stands in the dock of an adult criminal court to be tried by an adult magistrate under the adult law. His mother is in the gallery. You can tell which woman she is because she's the only one weeping. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly and continuously. The way people weep when they've been weeping for long enough that their body has given up trying to stop. She's standing with her hands clasped in front of her and watching her son in the dock with the particular expression of someone who knows how this ends. The baker is also here. He's a solid man with an elaborate sense of civic duty. 4p in bread is not going to make or break him. He pressed the charge because it was the right thing to do, because property must be protected, because if you let the small thefts go, where does it end? The magistrate asked the boy why he took the bread. The boy says he was hungry. This is true. His mother works as a washerwoman. His father is dead. There are 4 children and not always enough to eat. The magistrate nods. He sentences the boy to 14 days hard labour. 10 years old, 14 days in a prison. Hard labour. This is not unusual. This is Tuesday. The mother in the gallery makes a sound. One sound, not a word. Just a sound. Then she's quiet again. Now I want to take you to the roof. Not by design. This is an accident. One of those small accidents that the city produces, the small gaps and opportunities that open up when you're small and quick and working in the margins of other people's houses. The job is a house on St. James's Square. A very good address. The kind of address that Murch doesn't usually get called to, where the fancier sweep masters work. But someone's recommended him, or there's been an emergency, or the regular man is ill. The top floor chimney requires access from the roof. There's a rooftop inspection hatch for exactly this purpose. Houses of this quality have the access built in. The houseman takes you up the back stairs and through the hatch and onto the roof, where Murch will direct you from below while you clear the chimney cap from the top, and then the houseman goes back inside for some reason, to get a tool, to answer a call, some minor domestic emergency, and Murch is 6 floors below, and you are alone on the roof of a St. James's Square house, on a clear day in late January. The clouds have broken this morning. A rare thing, a winter London blue sky, pale and cold and wide. You stand at the parapet, and London is below you. I need you to understand what this looks like to someone who has never been above the 3rd floor of a building in their life. It doesn't look like a city. It looks like the idea of a city, like someone described what a city should be and then built too much of it. The rooftops extend in every direction. A world of chimneys. So many chimneys. More chimneys than you've ever seen at once, and you've stared at chimneys all your life. They rise in rows and clusters and individual columns, some smoking, some not. The smoke from the smoking ones going up straight in the still air and then fading into the pale sky above. You can see St. Paul's dome. It rises above everything. Enormous, impossible seeming from this angle. The stone white in the winter sun. You've walked past it on the ground 100 times and it's impressive on the ground, but from up here it looks like it belongs to a different scale of existence, like it was built for something larger than people. The Thames is a silver strip in the distance. You can see the ships. You can see actual ships, their masts clustered together in the pool below the bridge, and across all of it, smoke. Not the close brown fog of the street, but a distant haze, the accumulated breath of 1,000,000 fires, 1,000,000 hearths. It softens everything at distance, makes the far buildings fade into something like a watercolour. 500,000 people live below you right now. Thomas in the basement coughing. Will probably carrying brushes somewhere. Sparrow planning his escape. Mrs. Winter on Endell Street. The boy in the magistrate's court. The wet nurse's infant. Edmund at his school, writing, "I am well." All of them below these rooftops. All of them inside the same system. All of them children, which in 1843 means different things depending on which side, of which invisible line you were born on. You stand at the parapet for maybe 5 minutes. Then Murch's voice comes up from below, faint but unmistakable, asking where the hell you are. You go back to work. Let me tell you what the next 40 years look like from here. Not for you specifically. The specific future of any individual child in 1843 is its own unknowable story. But for children like you, for the system that holds you. 1848, the Public Health Act. Doesn't directly address children, but begins the slow process of cleaning up the water and the streets that are killing working-class infants by the thousand. 1850, a new round of Factory Act amendments. The 10-hour limit starts being actually enforced in some factories some of the time. 1853, mandatory smallpox vaccination for infants. The beginning of the idea that the state has an obligation to protect children's health, even against parental preference. 1870, the Education Act. Every child in England must attend school. School must be provided. The state commits to universal education. This one is enormous. This is the beginning of the idea that every child has a claim on the state's resources, not just the children of people who can pay. 1875. The Chimney Sweepers Act finally works, enforced by the police. Real penalties, the end of climbing boys definitively. 32 years from now, 1880. School attendance becomes compulsory, not just available, compulsory. 1889, the Prevention of Cruelty to Children Act, the first law that specifically defines cruelty to children as a crime. The first law that says what you do to children in your own home is subject to legal scrutiny. 46 years from where you're standing on this roof. The NSPCC is founded the same year. Dr. Barnardo has been running homes for destitute children since 1870. The idea that someone should be responsible for children who have no one to be responsible for them. That idea has become an institution. None of this is fast enough. None of it comes close to fast enough. But it comes. There's a boy in this story who hasn't come back yet. Edmund at the boarding school. It's been 4 months now. He's still writing the letters, the I am well letters, the correct letters. But something is happening to Edmund that wasn't planned. He's made a friend, a boy named Francis, who sleeps 2 beds down, and who has a trick of making faces behind the master's back that has got him caned 3 times, but who apparently cannot stop doing it. Francis is the kind of person who finds the comedy in everything and cannot be stopped from sharing it with whoever is nearby. He made a face at Edmund during evening prayers, and Edmund laughed. An actual laugh, too loud, at the wrong moment. He was caned for it. Francis whispered sorry to him afterward, genuinely. They've been inseparable since. It doesn't fix the school. The cane is still the cane. The food is still cold and inadequate. The dormitory is still cold, and Dr. Henning is still exactly himself. But something about having Francis here, something about not being alone, changes the arithmetic. Edmund is still writing I am well in his letters home. But now, some days it's slightly less of a lie. I need to go back to that small brown bottle. 3 weeks after the morning you clean the chimneys there, the infant in the nursery gets sick. This is not unusual. Victorian infants get sick constantly. They're vulnerable to everything, their immune systems working overtime against a world full of pathogens that nobody yet understands. A fever, a respiratory infection, something passed from a servant or a visitor or the general miasma of the city. The mother, alarmed but also accustomed to infant illness. You have to be accustomed to it. It's the constant background noise of having small children in 1843. Gives the baby its drops. The Godfrey's cordial, the soothing dose, to keep it calm while the fever does its work. The baby has the fever and the medicine at once. Laudanum in an infant with a respiratory infection suppresses the breathing. It's not what the Godfrey's cordial says it does. It's not what any doctor prescribes it for, but it's what it does at a physiological level. The body's impulse to breathe, to cough, to clear its own airways. It quiets that impulse along with everything else. The infant survives. This time it was close. The doctor is called. He prescribes rest and warmth and reduction of stimulation. He does not advise stopping the Godfrey's cordial. He doesn't know what we know. He's working with 1843's understanding of infant physiology, which is limited. The mother sits with a baby all night. She's terrified. She's also exhausted. She's been awake for 2 nights, and she has a household to run, and 2 older children and a husband who manages his anxiety about the infant's illness through controlled distance, through the specific emotional suppression that his gender and class have trained into him, that particular form of being in the room but not in the room. She loves this child so completely that the fear of losing it is physical. It sits in her chest like something with weight. And she has no framework, no medical knowledge, no historical perspective, no alternative narrative that would tell her the bottle in her apron pocket is part of the danger rather than part of the solution. She gives the baby another dose because it's crying. The baby sleeps, the mother watches. The seasons change. February becomes March. The February that you survive by putting your cold feet against Thomas's legs at night, that you live through by being in constant motion through daylight hours, that February ends. March brings a quality of light you'd almost forgotten existed. Not the thick grey light of winter, not the flat diffusion of cloud and coal smoke, but an actual light, a light with direction to it, that makes long shadows in the mornings and turns the walls of the buildings pale gold for an hour at the end of the day. It lands on your face when you turn toward it. It has warmth in it, just slightly, just barely, the first real warmth in months. The city smells different. Still bad. London always smells bad. This is fundamental. But the specific badness of winter gives way to the specific badness of early spring. The frozen mud thawing into actual mud. The river smell returning as the temperatures rise. The smell of horse much stronger now that the cold is off it. It's unpleasant, but it's alive. There's something growing in it. Thomas is worse in March. The warmer air makes the cough more frequent, not less. The wet sound is deeper now. He gets through the work, but you can hear what it costs him. The careful management of breath, the deliberate control, the way he positions himself so that Murch is less likely to notice. At night the coughing goes on past the point where he can be sleeping, and you lie on. You're sacking and listen to it and think about Pott's cancer and the lung disease and all the things that Murch won't say. Thomas is 9 years old and he's been climbing chimneys for 3 years. You have been here for 2. You have, by various calculations, 4 more years of this. You are good at it now. You can read a flue by smell and feel. You can feel the shape of a blockage before you touch it. You know which types of chimney are clean jobs and which will send you home covered in creosote. You have calluses on your elbows and knees that are their own kind of armour. You are very good at something that is destroying your body. This is the trap. The thing you get better at is also the thing you can't afford to be in for another 4 years. Sparrow runs in March. He's planned it for months. He waits for a morning when Murch is occupied at the far end of a job, and he simply walks away. Out the front door of a Mayfair house and down the street and gone. Murch spends a day looking for him. 2 days. Then the look on his face settles into something resigned, and he starts asking around about a replacement, and that's the end of Sparrow's story in this house. Where Sparrow goes, you don't know. Running from an apprenticeship is technically illegal. Murch could have him brought back. In practice, if the boy keeps moving and keeps out of the constable's sight, he's probably all right. London is enormous. Boys disappear into it. You hope he finds something better. Dr. Bernardo is 2 years old right now. He's in Dublin, not London. He won't arrive in London for another 20-odd years, won't open his first home for destitute boys until 1870. But the shape of what he'll build is being created by the problem you're living. Every boy like you, every orphaned street child, every workhouse boy apprenticed to a bad master. All of you are the raw material for the reformers' argument. When Ashley stands in Parliament, it's your face he's describing. When Dickens writes, it's your life he's fictionalizing. When the women of the philanthropic societies visit the ragged schools and write their reports and read those reports aloud at parlour meetings, it's boys like Thomas they're talking about. You don't know this. You're just trying to get through the winter. But somewhere in the gap between your life and the life of the children in Belgravia nurseries, in the gap between Edmund's boarding school and the chandler's boy with the candles, in that gap something is growing. A conviction. A gradually building shared understanding that the way things are is not the way things have to be. That children, all children, regardless of whose children they are, have a claim on the future. That claim will take decades to become law. It will take even longer to become practice. It is incomplete even now, in your time, the time of the person reading this, but it's growing. High summer. The city at its most difficult. The heat sits in the streets and doesn't leave. It's absorbed by the stone during the day, and radiated back at night so the air never actually cools below a particular threshold. The river is at its worst. The smell of the Thames in a hot summer in 1843 is something that defies description, something that reaches you before the river does, something that makes people on the embankment press handkerchiefs to their faces and walk quickly. They call it the Great Stink, though the Great One, the one that actually moves Parliament to vote funds for a sewer system, hasn't happened yet. That's in 1858. For now, it's just the regular bad smell of a river that serves as both water source and sewer for a city of 2 million. Murch works you earlier in summer. The chimneys that don't need sweeping in the cold season get swept in the summer months. A different schedule, a different rhythm. Less work, maybe, but what work there is happens in the baking heat. You climb a chimney in July and the brick is warm from the sun on the outside surface, and the air in the flue is stuffy, close. The particular quality of unmoving hot air that makes every breath feel inadequate. You're up 20 feet and sweating freely. The sweat mixing with the soot running down your face, going in your eyes. Your shirt sticks to your back. The rough fabric against your skin is its own small misery. But you know this chimney. You've done it before. You know the flue is clear down to about 12 feet, and the blockage, if there is one, will be at the elbow, and this chimney has an unusual elbow, a corner built to navigate around something in the original structure, and soot accumulates there. It's there. You scrape it loose. It falls. You follow it down. Out in the alley behind the house, you sit on the step and breathe. Thomas is beside you. Thomas is always beside you, has been your constant companion through 2 seasons of this, will be your companion until... And here's the thought you don't finish, the thought that stops before it gets to where it's going. Thomas's cough in summer is different, less wet, more dry, more frequent. When he takes a deep breath, you can hear something in it that doesn't belong there, a small sound like paper tearing. He's 9 years old and he sounds like someone much older. Sparrow was right, he says. You don't say anything. About running. Still nothing from you. I can't run, Thomas says. Not asking for your opinion, not proposing a plan, just stating it. His feet are bare on the hot stone. He's looking at the sky above the alley, which is a strip of bright blue between the rooftops. Don't have anywhere to go. Me neither. This is true. The somewhere to go is what running requires. Neither of you has it. Thomas coughs, covers his mouth with his hand, looks at what's in his hand. You both look. Neither of you says what you're both thinking. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. Not the cruelty. The cruelty is there. In the magistrate sentencing a 10-year-old to hard labour, in the baby farmer, in Dr. Henning's cane. The cruelty is documented and it's real. But most of the harm in this story isn't cruelty, it's normalcy. Murch is not a cruel man. He provides what the law requires, what convention requires. He doesn't beat you often. He feeds you enough to work. By the standards of his time and place, he is not a bad master. The mother with the laudanum loves her child completely. She's not negligent. She's doing what she was told to do by her own mother, by the doctor, by the culture she lives in. Edmund's father shook his hand instead of hugging him, because men of his class and era do not hug their sons at the school gate. He believes he's giving his child the best possible start in life. He is proud of his son. He writes to the headmaster inquiring about Edmund's progress, and the headmaster writes back that the boy is settling in well and applying himself to his Latin, and the father reads this letter with satisfaction. The wet nurse took the job because her family needed the money. She is not responsible for what she cannot control. None of these people are monsters. They are people living inside a system that has not yet developed the concepts needed to see the harm they're participating in. A system that has not yet decided that childhood is a thing worth protecting, that children's pain and fear and damage matter regardless of who their parents are. The moral work of the 19th century, the work that Ashley and Barnardo and Dickens and 100 others are doing, is the work of making this visible, of creating the concepts that make the harm seeable, of making it possible to say, this is wrong. Here is specifically what is wrong. Here is the mechanism by which it causes harm. Here is what must be done. That work takes time. It always takes time. And children live in real time, not historical time. They don't have the luxury of waiting for the moral arc to bend. Thomas's cough is happening now, not eventually. Now. One Sunday in late summer. You have the penny. You've had it since January. You've kept it in the sacking in your shoe through winter and spring and into the first heat. And it's become something you touch sometimes. Not in a superstitious way exactly, but in the way you'd touch something that reminds you that you exist as a separate thing from all the rest of this. You spend it on a second-hand book. There's a stall near the market that sells old books. Not the good kind, not the illustrated kind, just printed matter that nobody wants anymore. Religious tracts, old almanacs, a few fiction works, well worn, their spines soft. You don't read very well. Your letters from the parish school, the brief instruction you had before you came to Murch's, got you far enough to pass simple words if you go slowly. You pick up a small book. The title takes you a minute. Natural History of the English Shore. Someone's collected descriptions of birds, illustrations, small and detailed, made in a technique you don't know the name for, but which renders each bird precisely. The feathers, the eye, the specific shape of a beak designed for a specific purpose. The book costs a penny. You buy it. You take it back to the attic and you look at the pictures, turning the pages carefully, and you recognise almost none of the birds from your limited experience of birds except the sparrows and the rooks you see on rooftops. But each bird has a place that it belongs to. Each bird has a habitat described in the text below its picture. Marshes, woodlands, cliff faces, open sea, places you've never been, will probably never go. Thomas looks over your shoulder. "What's that one?" he asks, pointing at a small, nondescript bird with a long beak. You look at the text below. The letters come slowly. "Woodcock," you say. "Where does it live?" You read more slowly. "Woodland, near water." Thomas nods, considers the woodcock for a moment. "I'd like to see woodland," he says. He doesn't say it sadly. He says it the way you'd say you'd like another potato, or you'd like for it to not be raining. A quiet want, with no expectation attached to it. "Maybe you will," you say. You both know it's not likely, but you turn to the next page. November comes. A year since you left whatever came before. A full year in this basement, in these chimneys, in this city. Will can climb now. Murch started him 2 months ago on wide flues first, and Will has turned out to have a talent for it, or rather, has turned out to be small enough and frightened enough to do it quickly, which amounts to the same thing in Murch's view. You're the experienced one now. You show Will the placement of elbows and knees, the way to breathe, the rule about not panicking. You explain it the way Thomas explained it to you, and you watch Will absorb it, and you think, this is wrong. Not in a political sense. You don't have those words. just in the basic sense that you're looking at a 7-year-old boy and you're teaching him to go up chimneys, and something in your body understands, even if your mind can't frame it, that this is wrong. You teach him anyway, because the alternative is Murch teaching him, and Murch's methods involve the back of a hand as a regular pedagogical tool. At least you won't hit him. Thomas is worse. The cough is there even when he's not coughing. You can hear it in his breathing, a congestion, a restriction. He's slower on the climbs. Murch hasn't said anything yet, but you can see him watching Thomas, the way a man watches a tool that's starting to wear out, making calculations you'd rather not know about. It's dark. It's always dark in the attic, but tonight there's a particular quality to the dark. Overcast, no moon, the city outside quieter than usual because of the cold and the lateness. You can hear the church bells somewhere, counting out an hour. You're lying on your back, the book with the birds open on your chest. You've looked at it so many times the pages are worn soft at the corners. The woodcock, the curlew, the gannet with its white plumage and its cliff. Thomas is beside you, breathing carefully, the deliberate, careful breathing of someone managing what their body does. Will is already asleep, his face turned to the wall, his breath slow and even. 7 years old and already knowing not to cry at night where anyone can hear. The new boy, there's a new boy, 12, came 3 weeks ago from the parish, doesn't speak much yet, is awake. You can tell from the quality of his stillness. You're all awake, in the particular way of people who spend a lot of time in shared dark spaces. And here is what I want you to know. These children, Thomas and Will and the new boy and you, are not unusual. They are not exceptional sufferers. They are not characters in a cautionary tale. They are the standard. They are what most English childhoods in 1843 consist of in one form or another. The childhood in the Belgravia nursery, with the rocking horse and the governess, and the carefully measured dose of Godfrey's cordial, and the piano left open on the stand. That is also not unusual. That's also normal, just a different kind of normal. These two kinds of normal exist simultaneously, in the same city, under the same overcast sky, breathing the same coal smoke air. And neither category knows yet that there will be a third normal, that there will come a time, not soon, not in the lifetime of most of these children, but coming, when the idea of a child going up a chimney will be literally unimaginable, when a mother giving her infant opium to sleep will be criminal, when every child, regardless of whose child they are, has a right to education and safety, and a body that isn't used up before it's finished growing, when beating a child is not character building but assault, when I am well can actually be true. It's coming. You don't know that. You can't know that. You close the book on the gannet, your finger still on the page. Let it go quiet now. The city outside is doing what cities do at this hour. Not sleeping exactly, but settling. The worst of the noise has faded. The last carriages have passed. The pub on the corner has finally gone dark. Somewhere out there, a watch is being called. An hour in a voice that carries in the cold air. You've been awake since before dawn. Your body knows this. It's been knowing it for the last hour, the heaviness accumulating, the particular weight of a worked-out body that has given everything it has and is now requesting firmly that consciousness cease for a while. Your elbows ache. They always ache. The same low background ache that's been there so long it's become part of the way you experience existing. Your lungs feel okay, not good. Not the deep, clean breath you probably had before any of this started. But okay, enough. The book is on your chest. The gannet and the woodcock and the curlew with their particular places and their particular shapes. The city breathes around you. 500,000 people are sleeping or trying to sleep or working through the night. The night soil carters are already moving through the streets. Somewhere, a baker is already starting the morning's bread. The warmth from that bread is already finding its way into the cold air somewhere. Somewhere a mother is awake with an infant. Somewhere Sparrow is in whatever place Sparrow found to be. Centuries from now someone will lie in a bed that is warm and quiet and safe, and they will try to sleep, and they might think about what it meant to be a child before childhood was protected, before the concepts existed, before the law existed, before the people who saw the problem had managed to make enough other people see it too. They will sleep in a house that has central heating, in a country that has compulsory education, in a legal system that has child protection laws, in a medical culture that knows what laudanum does to infants, in a world where the very idea of a child up a chimney is the stuff of nightmares, not of Tuesday. All of that came from somewhere. It came from the people who looked at boys like you and said, "This is wrong. This specifically is wrong, and we will name it. And we will make that name into law, and we will enforce the law, and we will keep going until the chimneys are cleaned by brushes on poles and not by children on their elbows." It took too long. It was always going to take too long. Children always pay the cost of history moving at history's pace rather than at the pace that would be right. But it came. So let the weight settle now. Let the ache in your elbows be just an ache, not a sentence. Let the dark of the attic be just the dark, the ordinary dark before sleep, not the dark of a flu. Let the breathing of the others in the room be company, imperfect company, the company of shared circumstance, which is not nothing, which is in fact something. Let the city's murmur be distant. Let it be something happening elsewhere, not something requiring anything from you. You've done enough today. You've done enough. The book rises and falls on your chest with every breath, the gannet on its page white against the printed sky. Close your eyes. Let the sound of the bells marking the hour be the last thing you hear, or almost the last before the counting fades and the hours stop mattering and the dark becomes the particular dark of actual sleep, which is warm and asks nothing and gives back whatever you can take from it. The childhood that should have been yours is somewhere in the future that all these children were the reason for. Rest now. You've earned it. The Chimney Sweepers Act of 1875 finally ended the use of climbing boys in England. The NSPCC was founded in 1889. Dr. Barnardo's homes gave shelter to over 60,000 destitute children before his death in 1905. Lord Shaftesbury spent 40 years fighting for children no one else would fight for. The reformers won. It just took longer than any child could wait. Good night.